Hello, and welcome to Cutoff Genes, the podcast that teaches you how to find your truth using nothing but DNA. I'm Julie Dixon Jackson, and I'm a genetic genealogist, henceforth known as a Gen Genie.
And I'm trying my best. And also learning a lot about grammar, apparently, today.
This is my daughter, Lily Jackson,
Hi,
who forgot
Lily.
to introduce herself.
I am Richard Castle, the producer, and I'm the only member here that is not a Jackson.
That's true.
Neither are we. It's a made-up name.
That's true.
Yeah, it is. All right. Hey, everybody. You may have noticed that I emphasized the word henceforth.
Oh, my God.
All right. So I got a little message from somebody yesterday who would like to remain anonymous. And I will honor that because she felt really bad about being pedantic. And I understand that because I, too, am pedantic.
Yeah,
but,
you are.
Yeah. But she couldn't help herself. And so I took it as I should, as a pedantic idiot myself. So she told me that I'm saying heretofore, which, yes, I've said that from like the third episode because it just kind of rolled off my tongue and I liked it. But she told me that heretofore is not a word.
It's not.
And thank you for telling me.
I didn't notice, evidently, so I'm in the wrong as well.
Okay, good. So yeah, it's apparently I combined heretofore and henceforth. And henceforth is the correct use of the word because heretofore means up until now, and henceforth means after now.
So wouldn't it be both? So in a way, you could do both.
Maybe I should say heretofore, henceforth.
I think we should all speak in Old English now. Ye Old English.
Ye oldie
Shakespearean?
English.
Toot sweet.
Toot Sweet.
Toot sweet. That's a good one.
It's my drag queen name. Hey, I'm Toot Sweet.
It's good. That is actually a good drag queen name.
My drag queen name was Courtesy Flush.
Oh, my God.
That should be a drag king name.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
No, my drag king name is perimenopause.
We came up with that this week.
Yeah.
Okay, she came up with that, but I used
Thank
the term.
you.
I wonder why. All right.
Okay.
So that's the first corrections corner for this week.
First,
I just wonder, I question why all three of us have drag queen names.
You know what? You got to be ready at any time.
Right.
Yeah.
You never know.
Right. So the second corrections corner is when I listened back to last week's episode. For some reason, during the Jed Match Jamboree, I mistakenly said that women get 2 X's from their mother. When the
Isn't it
fact,
one?
yes, they get 1. That's what I'm good. That's what I'm getting
I was
at.
listening to it this morning, and I was like,
that
that's
bother you?
wrong.
Well, thanks. I'm fixing it as we speak. Anyway, the fact is that they do get 2 X's, one from their mother and one from their paternal grandmother.
Oh.
Because they get it from their father, but he got it from his mother. Because
Okay.
men don't pass on
Well, because
the X gene to men.
Because women are XX and men are XY.
XY.
Yeah.
Yes. And I'm actually, oh boy, I'm going to talk about it more later.
Great.
Yippee.
I look forward to it.
News in DNA testing. If you tested a 23andMe prior to June 2017, go check out your account. Yeah.
Why?
Well, they've finally given us the new reports that were missing when we were migrated to the new website last June.
Oh. Was it a lot of information?
Apparently so. Well, so when I first tested, it was in that interim time when the FDA had not allowed them to do the
Food
health
and Drug
reports.
Association?
Administration. Yes. Yes.
Because they spit?
I don't know why.
Why is it related to the FDA?
It is the FDA, I think. This may be a corrections corner for next week. Anyway,
great.
so there were no health reports available at that time. So I tested anyway because I don't care about the health reports. And then when it came back, they changed the whole website. But those of us who were there before didn't get the full
Monty.
yes, extravaganza of it until now.
Later. Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Wow.
So what now? What now? How about that? There are now 43 carrier status reports, 6 genetic health risk reports, and 3 additional opt-in reports for Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, and BRCA, which is which indicates cancer, mainly ovarian and breast cancer.
Do you think the reason that they withheld it or that the FDA had anything to do with it was because they don't want people learning about some kind of disease that they might be carrying without a professional there to tell them what it means?
Yeah, I think so. I think they needed to regulate it, and they needed to figure out. There were questions about whether or not this information should go to people without a doctor. They don't tell you if you have a terrible disease. They just tell you if you are prone to get a terrible disease.
Great.
Basically. And now, as Renee has said before, every time you go in there, they ask you several times, we have this report. Do you want to look at it? And you say yes. And then they say, are you sure you want to look at it?
Oh my God. Well, yeah, because it would cause just a lot of anxiety. Feels like you might get this
If you're
bad,
somebody
bad
like
thing.
like your dad, for example.
Famously a hypochondriac.
He's a little bit of a hypochondriac.
Yeah, but so am I.
He just cares. Well, gee, I wonder why.
But I also think it's important, like if you were thinking about having children or you have children, you want to know, like, what are you
yeah.
passing on? You know?
Yes,
yeah.
you do. That's a very good point. All right. Somebody in the Facebook group posted a link. Shut up. Somebody in the Facebook group posted a link to a radio interview about dibblings.
What's a dibbling? I love that word, though. Ooh.
You know, I know we haven't done a word of the week in a while or a phrase of the
that would
week,
have
but
been a
I
good
think
one.
dibblings is a good one. So.
Oh,
Okay.
I just want to hear someone say it over and over again. Will you?
Like
For the
genetic
rest of the
genealogist,
podcast?
Changini.
I like
henceforth known as dibblings.
Dibblings.
All right. More and more. Okay. A dibling is a donor child's sibling.
Okay.
Or half siblings. So they are a child of that same sperm or egg donor.
Okay. Got it. Yeah.
So more and more parents of donor-conceived children are seeking out and connecting with their children's siblings who were conceived. It works for them because it gives them a sense of connection.
So wait, let me just make sure.
Yeah.
So like, say someone is a sperm donor and just like they go to a place where they donate.
Yes,
sperm?
they go to
Yeah.
a place.
So and then
I mean, usually some people don't.
yeah, but that kind of thing.
Yes.
And then they do that when like they're young, and then they go about their life, and then they have like kids like not sperm.
No. These are other donor-conceived kids, so they're half siblings.
But the same like father, same sperm donor.
Correct.
Got it.
Or egg donor could be
Got
the
it.
same mother.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It happens a lot now with donor-conceived people finding their biological fathers. For instance, they discover they have siblings,
Right.
Who are siblings who were conceived naturally.
Right.
There we go. Speaking of letting your children know about hereditary.
Good movie.
Hereditarial.
Good movie.
Good movie. Hereditary?
Yeah.
Never saw it.
Really scary. I
Okay.
recommend it. That's my movie corner.
Movie corner. So here's something that happened in the last couple weeks that's I've never experienced before because I've been very lucky. So there is a lady, we will call her
Credence.
Credence.
Sorry, first thing into my head.
Okay, fine, it's Credence. Wow. So Credence is a lady who was adopted.
Does she live in Clearwater?
I was waiting for it.
All right, so Credence, I had gotten in touch with her on Ancestry because she was a very close match to another person that I was helping.
Oh, wow.
And turns out she was adopted as well.
Mm-hmm.
And she matched through her biological mother, and it turned out that they both matched on the same side, so that's how we found the other person's biological grandfather.
Okay.
Anyway, so at that point, I had solved that, and Credence told me that she still would like to find her biological father for medical reasons.
Mm-hmm.
As I said, she had known her biological mother, who had passed since then, but she had some medical issues that were genetic. And she wanted to know, because for the doctor to know how to treat this disease that she has been diagnosed with, it would have helped them to know what strain it was, and because it ran in families. She would like to connect with that family to see if anybody in that family is suffering from it,
Right.
and how they have treated this.
Totally.
Okay. I went about my work and I figured out who her father had been. Yes.
Okay.
So Credence is in her 60s.
Uh-huh.
And I did a mirror tree and discovered that there was a certain family where There were DNA matches to Credence on both the maternal and paternal side. Second cousin matches on both sides, which points directly to those people as a couple. Credence match has 2 second cousins.
Yeah.
I worked both of their trees, and they both led to this one couple on different sides.
Okay.
Which means that Credence was related to both sides of that family.
Okay.
Starting with that couple.
Got it.
The only way it couldn't be or wouldn't be is if they each had a sibling that married each other as well.
Got it.
Then that would have made a little more sense.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, so she had to be of that pairing, from that pairing, and it was relatively close.
Okay.
This couple had 3 children. 2 of them were girls. There was 1 boy. As far as we know.
As far as we know. Okay.
Yes. And Credence was born in 1955. He died in an accident in 1956. Credence had told me, well, all of my paternal matches can't be my matches, which doesn't make sense because they are your matches.
Yeah.
But they're all from Texas. And she was born in another state, another northern state, not even close to Texas.
Weird.
So when I found this gentleman who was the only son of this couple, I researched him. That's when I discovered that he had passed away, and I also discovered that he was in the military.
Okay.
And Credence was born in a little town that was surrounded by military bases.
Oh, okay.
So that's how it all made
Connects
sense.
together. Okay,
right.
yeah.
So that's my hypothesis, and I'm 98% sure it's correct. One of the sisters is still alive, and I reached out to her, and I didn't hear back from her. She's in her 80s, understandable.
Sure, yeah.
So I then reached out to her daughter on Facebook and explained the situation and explained as much as I could how I arrived at it and directed her to my website and to, so that she knew I wasn't some nut.
Totally.
Right. And she said she would talk to her mother and see what she wanted to do and blah, blah, blah. And at this point, all I'm asking for is a DNA test so that we can either prove it or disprove it.
Totally.
And it took a few weeks for them to get back to me. Finally, I got a message back from the sister, and she told me that they have decided they don't want to do the DNA and they don't want to be involved, and please take their family off of the list. And they didn't want to see how I had arrived at that.
They didn't want any of the information that you
Right.
Okay.
Had painstaking.
Yeah.
Right. Right. And the thing is, I can't take them off of the tree because they're the family.
It's foundational.
Right.
Yeah,
she said both sides
of
of that family. Don't put any of these people in or these people in. Well, they have to be.
No
so
way.
she doesn't understand it.
No.
Right.
Of course not.
So that's what we adoptees call second rejection. And I kind of felt it.
For this person?
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, why wouldn't you?
It's, okay.
Well, I mean, I think, no, I just mean in terms of it, because you know the experience and you've been lucky to have people in your family
Right. Well, especially because, and she actually wrote me a note, Credence actually wrote me a note saying, look, she described what her medical issue was, and she's been in law enforcement all her life, and she understands privacy issues, and she didn't want to invade anybody. All she wanted was this, and if they didn't want a relationship, she could live with that.
Yeah.
And I sent that to them.
Just wanted the information.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So I sent that to them, and they still ignored it.
That's wild.
So yeah, I'm a little sad about that.
Of course.
Yeah.
Not everybody is as open as we would like them to be, and I mean honestly, when you were telling your story, Julie, I was kind of surprised that people were so willing,
receptive, yeah,
right, to take DNA tests from strangers, essential strangers, and as it turned out, they were strangers, but they still said yes. So I and also, didn't you say this woman was an elderly lady, and I just wonder if perhaps technological thing is a barrier as well.
Absolutely, it is, and I understand for her. However, I believe the daughter. Yes, because she said, I've spoken to both of my daughters about this, and we have all agreed.
Yeah.
And so that makes me sad because, and here's the thing, they appear to, from her Facebook page, the daughter appears to be quite devout.
Sure.
And so is Credence. So
it's
I feel like it would be a humane thing to do.
Oh, it would
and
be.
Also, Credence is a part of this woman's brother that she lost when she was a teenager.
Right.
To me, that's another aspect of it. Like, this is an actual, she's a niece.
Right.
So,
Do you think that because there might be some kind of scandal or something? Oh well, there's this daughter that was given up for adoption, or
possibly. I'm convinced he never knew about her. That's the most likely scenario. The daughter did talk about everything she's heard about him. He was an upstanding young man and blah, 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 and he wouldn't. So, yeah, I think because it's an older generation, there's some shame involved in it. But
And just people don't understand that. I think a lot of people like that you've spoken to and like you've had a lot of like good experiences. I think a lot of people don't realize that like it's not a matter of privacy, because this is like, not only is this in a way public in terms of records and you can build a tree just off that, but it's like it's not like you're being like, hi, I just found this whole family. Let's tell the entire world of it. It's like it's to help people take steps to like understanding.
correct.
well, especially where there was this medical side of it, and I wonder if there was a way she could have just asked her, does this person have anyone in the family that she knows that has this condition?
Right.
And perhaps then she could just speak to that person or something,
Right. Well, I forwarded that to the lady, so she knows, and she knows specifically what the condition is, and so I don't know. There is one other option, and is to reach out to another family member, to somebody else that would be close enough that I could still figure it out whether or not it was. So I may do that. I don't know, but that's that's what happened, and it's a little bit sad. It's not all wins.
No.
Yeah, and on that note, we're taking a break.
If you're enjoying Cutoff Jeans, please subscribe, rate, and review.
And we are back.
Back, baby. We're back in the studio. We took a quick break. We did some laps, and now we're here. I'm just riffing.
Why have I allowed her back in here?
I'm your spawn.
You are. Okay. That's a word I would have used.
Yeah, well.
Okay, fine. Hey, you know what time it is?
It's time. It's time for the
Jed Match Jamboree.
I was so excited.
Okay, fine. Yeah. So last week during the Jed Match Jamboree, we talked about once again for the second week in a row, we talked about the one-to-many table that shows if you match someone in various different ways, and I kind of glossed over the whole X chromosome thing. Mm-hmm. But I want to talk a little bit more about the X chromosome and the significance of it.
Favorite topic.
Is it? Yeah, I know. I won't get too deep into it because it's pretty complicated, even for me, especially for me, actually. So here's a little insight on the X chromosome.
Ooh.
Are you ready?
Yeah.
All right. So the X is not like the Y, in which that it is only carried by men and remains relatively unrecombined for generations.
Got it.
That's the beauty of the Y chromosome. Women don't have that luxury. Typical. The fact is that women carry 2 X's, as I said before, and men carry 1 that was passed down from his mother. Women get 1 from her mother and 1 from her father, which came from from his mother.
Yes.
As I said earlier. So we know that if there is an X match, there are many lines that you can definitively rule out if you're trying to ascertain which family you both match.
Okay.
It's virtually impossible to explain for me, so I'm going to once again post a couple of charts on the Facebook group.
We love a chart.
Yay, we love a chart. And they're separate charts. There's one for men and one for women. And it highlights the only lines that you could have an X match from.
Okay.
And so in men, I think it cuts out half of the possibilities. And in women, I think it's like 2/3.
Wow.
I may be wrong about that. Okay. There's also, you can also Google XDNA, let me see. Blaine Bettinger's The Genetic Genealogist site has a good chart or a couple of charts, or just Google XDNA inheritance chart, and you'll be inundated with options that you want to print and save if you don't want to have to go back to the page to the group every time.
But
all right?
Like everyone has X and not everyone has Y is the baseline. And
every woman has 2 X's.
Yeah.
Every man has X and a Y.
yeah, because women are universal.
Yes, and how
Baby.
it is, but with men it stops at specific you know what I mean.
Places,
All right, so I'm going to give you a few practical uses of xDNA that you could, that are certainties that you can use in your research once you get a little further into it. All right. So, practical uses of xDNA. If a male shares xDNA with a match, then the ancestry in common will be on his mother's ancestral lines, according to the X inheritance patterns in the male charts. Mm-hmm. If brothers share very little xDNA with each other, one will have inherited most of his X from his mother's father, and the other would have inherited most of his X from his mother's mother.
Okay.
Or they inherited the exact opposite of a unrecombined X.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. All right. A daughter will share a whole X chromosome with her father.
Hey,
Full
Dad.
sisters.
Hey,
Yeah.
Dad, did you hear that?
Oh, boy. Full sisters will share a whole X chromosome from their father. Half sisters will share a whole X chromosome if they have the same father. Now, that one's important if you're an adoptee and you get a match that looks like it could be a half sister or maybe a first cousin, you're not really sure. Mm-hmm. You can go to GEDmatch and look at your X match. If you match on the X, that's pretty much going to tell you that you are half sisters.
Oh,
so that's
okay.
a big one. You can attribute X segments to particular grandparents by comparing your X DNA with cousins and other close relatives from each side of your family. Mm-hmm. That's going pretty deep, but eventually we'll get there. Also, don't forget when you are talking to matches, don't forget to ask them to look at the charts and work out which of their lines you could match them on. That way you can narrow down the possible branches from both sides of the family.
So, sorry, just
Go ahead.
making sure. Well, no, I know this is correct. But hey, I had two exes because I am a woman, and one of my exes comes from you, and the other one comes from my grandma on dad's side.
Yes.
And that's why I look like her, maybe.
No.
I mean,
no.
No.
It could, but you know what? We get different
Everything from
parts
everywhere.
of, yeah.
That's science, baby.
You look like your brother.
Well, that doesn't help me.
And you look like both your father and me at different times.
Great.
Oh boy, who cares?
Hopefully when
All
I'm
right.
50, I'll have hair.
Well, you're a girl.
When I'm
so
50 years old, I'll
we
look
all
like my
hope that.
father. When I'm 52, I'll look like my mother. And when I'm 40, I'll look like my father again.
I have no idea where this went off the rails, but it's time for a break before we get to the story.
Okay.
Thank you for listening to Cutoff Genes, the new podcast starring Julie Dixon-Jackson.
And we are back.
Woo!
Whoa.
How was your break? I'm just trying to be like Renee. Renee, please.
You be you.
Thanks. You're right.
Okay, good. You know what time it is?
I was going to do a bit, but I lost it. It's time for more of a story, please.
It's time for part 17 of Julie's epic Odyssey. Yippee.
You know,
What?
an Odyssey in its
Oh,
nature is
here we go.
epic. Have you read the Odyssey?
Oh, it is epic.
Yeah, by nature. Because, in fact, the Odyssey is an epic in itself. It's an epic poem.
So are you saying I'm doing a double...
Oxymoron. No, oxymoron.
no.
The same word meaning things.
Same things. Like one means the same thing as the other, so they don't need to go together?
Yeah.
I don't care.
I think you're doing an Iliad.
All right, so when last we spoke, I had sent a DNA test to this lovely lady named Ivy who had agreed to test because her brother, who had passed away in 1973, knew my mother.
Okay.
And I took that as some sort of clue, even though
Sure.
my mother said that, there was never a physical relationship with them, but I was grasping at straws. So, yeah. So, one day Ivy's results came in, and I'm just going to get to it. She didn't match at all.
Oh.
Wah, wah.
That's like a red herring. I feel like, oh my gosh, we introduced this character into the story,
And
and,
the
suddenly
next episode,
it comes to
psych.
nothing.
Sorry.
No, but I get it.
Yeah.
I totally get it. You're like, any man that you knew between this month and this month, please,
Sure.
take a DNA test.
Right. I just wanted to, and I wanted to, she's not the only person I tested. There were other people, but that's the only one I'm going to talk about because basically I got the same results from everybody, which were no, not a match.
Right.
So at that point, I was I was destined to just wait and hope that DNA comes in. All right, so.
And what do you mean by that? Like to wait and hope that DNA comes in? Explain that.
So you
Sent tests out, right?
you get DNA. No, comes into
just if someone happens
the
to-
database.
yeah.
Right. So as more people test, more results come in and you potentially have more matches. My hope was that a close match to my biological father would test and come up as a close match to me.
And it would just show up. In other words, you wouldn't have to go searching for it at this point. It would just because your information is already out there.
Correct.
Any match would just automatically, they would inform you.
Any match on Ancestry DNA or any of the other places that same person tested would all of a sudden just pop up in my list.
Gotcha.
Right. So I had to fill in the time. Mm-hmm. So I'd gotten pretty good at doing genealogy at that point.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, I had, Lily. So I did some research on my adoptive parents' trees, which was fun, and it was actually a nice respite from, because I wanted to do it for them. My mother's passed away, but I wanted to do it for her family and also my dad and his family. Fun facts about my mom's tree. My mom was born in Montana. And she was the youngest of 11 children. Her father, her father actually passed away when she was 3 months old, and she was raised by all the older siblings. But here's some things that I discovered when I was researching my mother's tree. Her paternal grandfather's name was Prince Albert Baxter.
We love it.
Prince Albert.
Was his first name Prince?
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
Her paternal grandmother had brothers named, are you ready? Martin Van Buren, George Washington, and Abraham Lincoln.
Get out of here. Are
We
you
love the
kidding me?
president.
No.
In
That is
this family.
hysterical.
Yep. They're all like, they just, Yeah, they were, Martin was born in 1850, George Washington, 1859, and Abraham Lincoln, 1860.
One of these things is not like the other.
Right.
You've got Washington and Lincoln and Van
Van
Buren.
Buren.
Yeah. Yeah, isn't that weird?
They're like Jefferson?
Well,
No.
they were born 10 years apart, so maybe they changed their politics.
Oh, my God.
But maybe when was Van Buren president? And perhaps he was like the president around that time.
Maybe that's what it is. Actually, I didn't check that. I probably should. I'll clear that up next week. Okay. So I'd never researched U.S. genealogy before.
Wow.
Because I'd just been doing Australia.
Yeah, exactly.
And
That's
which,
insane.
so I got pretty good at Australia, but this was my time to really hone in my U.S. skills.
Woohoo.
Well, how do they differ?
You get them in different ways. There are different records open to the public. Every state is different. Australia only has 5 states and 1 territory.
You were born there.
I know, 6 states and 1 territory. Okay. Whatever. And obviously there are way more states here, and every state has releases records in a different way, and you can view them in different ways, and some you can't view at all, and blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
So I had to learn all that stuff. And I've done a pretty full tree on my mom's side.
Impressive.
Thank you so much.
You're so welcome.
Thank you. So fun facts about my dad's side. And Dad was super into this. Once I started doing it, he loved finding out new stuff.
I wouldn't.
And we were at his house one time when I
were
started.
telling about it?
When
Yeah.
I was buying, I actually went online and I bought a bunch of certificates right
Oh,
online to show
yeah.
him, see, this is why I know this, Dad, and showed him the certificate of like who his great grandmother was and where she came from. It was either a birth certificate or something you have to purchase for like $25. But anyway,
What's the website? Birthdays, deaths?
birth, deaths, marriages.
Births, deaths, marriages.
Births, marriages, deaths. BMD, BDM. Nobody say a word. Okay. Yeah, I know. We discovered that his paternal great-grandfather came from Hanover, Germany. Nobody in the family knew that.
Oh.
I don't know why. It was like almost
he was,
a
He was
secret.
German? Or like...
My dad is part German.
Oh, wow.
Obviously. But I don't know if it has to do with the Nazi thing.
Yeah, I was about to ask.
I mean, he wasn't a Nazi. He was born in the late 18th century.
Oh, okay.
But maybe the family didn't talk about it because the Germans were on
association, yeah.
Yes. Anyway, so that was fun. And Dad wanted to do a DNA test. Unfortunately, he passed away before he had a chance to do it.
Yeah.
So, which is a bummer because I would love to have my dad's DNA.
Oh, yeah.
His brother is still alive. I may be able
should-
to.
yeah.
Yeah. If I don't know. Okay. So that was it. So once I was done with that, still
your
no
time.
DNA matches.
Jeez.
So then I dove back into my mother's tree. And there were lots of holes in my mother's tree. My birth mother's, yes. And there were lots of holes. The family, I asked questions over the years, and they told me just, lore. And most families just go by lore, just what they've been told if they're not into genealogy and aren't that. And if you're not interested, you're not interested. If you are, you really are, is what I've discovered. So I did end up breaking down a few brick walls, and I was able to confirm that the parents listed on my second great-grandfather's death certificate were incorrect.
Wow.
Which happens a lot. It's not unusual, especially when the informant, who is, I've talked about this before, who may or may not even know the history of the person who passed away, or in this case, it was his son, but I guess the family wasn't very close because he gave the wrong names
Oh my God.
as my third great-grandparents. He said that they were Lucy Blake and Peter Priest. In fact, they were Louisa Knight and Alexander Priest.
Wow.
Well, I will just add that this still happens because, when my dad passed away, I had to give a lot of information about him. And when I got the official death certificate, they had put my birth date, not the year, but the month and day as his birth date. And I'm like, well, that's not right.
that
And
ain't
of course,
right.
and it's really important when you when someone dies and you have to tell all the banks and everything
Yeah.
that everything match up. So I had to
That's
go back,
insane.
and then they had to reissue. And apparently, it's very common.
It's
So-
very common because it happened to me too.
Wow.
I obviously filled out my father's death certificate, and they misspelled his mother's maiden name.
Really?
And as a genealogist, I'm like, no! So I had to go back and correct that.
Of course.
Once I broke those down, I was able to then go back and look at records with those names and figured out all this stuff about my third great-grandfather and how many siblings he had, and have since found descendants of those siblings. And that's how we've... All right. I did an intensive project on Louisa, my third great-grandfather, to figure out what her story was. Her birth certificate said that she was born in Parramatta, which is Sydney.
Oh.
And the only thing I know about Parramatta in that time was that that's where they sent female convicts.
Oh.
And she may have been born to a female convict.
Oh, okay.
She said that her father was a sea captain. So anyway, but I've yet to get to the bottom of that one.
Right.
So I still don't know anything really. But what I did discover was she was a pretty colorful character.
Okay.
So I had names to work with. I went to a site called Trove, which is a website in Australia that has old newspaper articles and old publications and what have you. I also went to Birth, Deaths, and Marriages and got what I could. And I found marriage records, death records, birth records for the children. So I found out that she had 4 or 5 children. There's a question about that. And on Trove, I discovered several articles. Yes, they were a treasure. There were several articles. They lived in a place called Ballarat, which is one of the first gold mining towns during the gold rush. And so she seemed to be in court a lot.
Oh.
Yeah, she was there. One time she was there as a witness to somebody going in and stealing something from somebody else's tent. They lived in tents on the goldfields, guys.
Didn't you just go glamping like a couple of weeks ago too? Maybe it's in your DNA that you want to go and live in a tent.
My mom wouldn't live in a tent if she was paid to.
Enough said. Okay. And there was a couple of different articles about her having some kind of a problem with a person named Davy. There was one time when she had used abusive language with him, and there was another time where he was suing her or something. One of them was suing the other for a property that she owned, but he owned the stable that had been built on it.
Are you sure it wasn't a locker, as in Davy's locker?
There it is.
Stop talking. All right. So there was something weird about this property and all that. And so I thought that was very interesting. Well, then somebody else in Australia I asked somebody to help me with, they had access to births, deaths, and marriages that I didn't. And we discovered that after my third great grandfather was out of the picture, she had 3 more children. Actually, she had 4. One is living and is related to the woman whose picture looks just like my mother that I put up on the Facebook page.
Yeah.
And then there were 3 other children. I found their birth and death certificates because they each only lived a few days. And their father, it said putative father, which means assumed father. Somebody named Davy. Boom!
Somebody.
I figured it out. So this Davy guy was more than just someone she had issues with. She obviously had issues with.
I find that fascinating that you were able to put together this possible story. I mean, of course, there's no way to know definitely everything, but how many people are named Davy that, you have these court records and then also the
it's the same guy.
I know, right?
Yeah,
it's fascinating.
And also this Davy guy he was a carriage driver for Cobb & Co., which is a very famous carriage company in Australia. They were like the original buses. And the dispute they were having was over the stable on the property. So obviously he kept his own horses there. Anyway, so
there you go.
I thought that was a fun find for me. Then Louisa married a man named Trevin and had 2 more children with him who also died young. So I think maybe she either was getting too old to have children or possibly there was a defect that was just kept running in the family. Yeah, in the DNA. And then she passed away after she married him. He died a few years later, and then she ended up dying in 1890-something. What was interesting about that was, and this is a little tip, when you get certificates and you look at the names on them and they don't mean anything to you, periodically go back and look at the certificates again and see if those names now mean something to you.
Yeah.
So one day I was looking through my huge folder of all of the birth, death, marriages certificates that I've purchased over the years. I do that periodically just to reconnect myself with the families and see what I want to work on next, possibly. And I came across my great-grandfather's birth certificate. And I was looking at... I was looking at the names on it as I had many other times, and there are always a couple names that don't mean anything to me. Well, this time, my eyes fell upon the name of the witness, and it said Mrs. Trevin.
Okay.
Who was Louisa Priest Trevin.
Oh.
And that came full circle. I had proved my hypothesis.
The literal circle of life.
Yes, that Louisa Knight was my third great mother.
It is kind of amazing, though, how that name didn't mean anything to you when you saw it, and then you did all this research, and then you find out, oh, wait a minute, now I know who this person is and what her significance is.
Right. It was a really cool find, and it felt it was rewarding for me. All right. So this is what I did for basically 2 years? It's been 2 years since all of this happened.
Wow, it was
something like that.
2 years?
Well, let me see. That happened in the beginning of 2015. 2016, my dad passed away. And I was dealing with all that in 2017 and kind of getting back into the genealogy thing. And I happened to look at my DNA matches one day, just as was kind of my daily thing. I just log in and see if there's anything new. Well, guess what?
What?
I had a new match on Ancestry, and it said it was a first to second cousin match.
Wow.
That's 379 Santa Morgans. According to the shared Santa Morgan tool on DNA Painter, that could be a great, great uncle or aunt, a half great niece or nephew, a great niece, or a first cousin or a first cousin once removed.
Okay.
And in my experience now, that's usually what it is because the
cousin?
others, the ages are too...
Not connected. Yeah.
Anyway, so I clicked on the shared matches. Bingo, no relationship to my mother. I had a super close match on my paternal side. This was a year ago, it was May, a year ago this last May. And I looked at it, and of course there was no tree, but I sent a message to the person who was the administrator of this test. The name on the test was HK, and I sent her a message and sat there and waited for her to respond, keeping in mind that it's very rare to get responses
Right.
on Ancestry. A lot of people don't even check it. So, but I waited, and I think I'm going to end the story here and tell you what happens next week.
Wow, I hate you.
Patience is a virtue, and I have none of that.
Me too. So, yeah. So I kind of
That's
went
good.
through that couple of years as fast as I could because it wasn't really
There's a waiting
significant to the
period,
story.
yeah.
But, a lot happened. So there. And I'm going to tell you more next week.
Woo!
And on that note, Lily Zella Jackson, tell them about yourself.
I'm Lily. I don't got a lot going on. You can find me. Well, what? You can follow me on Twitter, Lily Zella, or Instagram, Lily Zella, and you can also find me whenever you close your eyes.
Rich?
For somebody who was correcting her mother's speech, I don't no, excuse me.
Oh no, I refuse to
trying
argue
something.
about this.
Okay.
I refuse.
Okay. I'm not going to be pedantic, but I am
Too late.
Exactly. I am Richard Castle, and you can follow me on Twitter at Castle Songs. I'm a songwriter and a musician, and I also have a website, richardcastle.com.
And you can follow our podcast on Twitter at Cutoff Jeans Pod. On Facebook, we have a group called the Cutoff Jeans Podcast. And there's also a Cutoff Jeans Podcast Instagram account. Hey, and guess what?
What?
There's also a YouTube account.
What?
I have one follower.
What are you possibly gonna post on YouTube?
You post it, and it's just like a solid picture of the
you're
front.
gonna post. Okay, got
but
it.
you can listen to it on there if you nothing else.
Well, I'm going to have to get into hair and makeup if we're going to start putting this videotaping these podcasts.
Nope, it's just a solid picture of the Cutoff Jeans. Yeah, it doesn't really go anywhere.
Makeup.
If you want to reach out to me or send me a direct message, you can do that at Jules Jackson with 2 O's at cutoffjeans.com. Please remember to subscribe, rate, and review. Share this with your friends. Say nice things. We love you. Thank you for listening. And, I have something else to tell you.
What do you have to say?
The truth is in your jeans.